Hi, 465. In part one, I introduced briefly concepts related to morphological awareness, which involves recognition of the parts of words that we call roots and affixes, meaning prefixes and suffixes. In this next section, I'm going to introduce instructional strategies or methods that you can use to help children apply their morphological awareness to analyze the meaning of words in text and then be able to read and make sense of the larger text, whether it's sentence level, paragraph level, whole text level. The first strategy is called the clue word strategy. Hellman, Calhoun, and Kern conducted a study and published the study in 2014, and they applied this clue word strategy with emergent bilingual students with disabilities at the high school level, and I'm going to share resources that are from this study cited with that 2014 publication date. So the clue word strategy has 8 steps that students can use to derive meaning from an unknown word in instructional content. The first step is to read a sentence with the target vocabulary word. That's the first step the student takes. As the teacher, you would have the target vocab word in mind and have a sentence with that word used in context to provide for the student to read. Next, the student looks for context clues at the sentence level that surround the unknown word. Then they reread the sentence. Next, the student writes the target vocabulary word and breaks the vocabulary word into its morphemes. Students write the meaning of each morpheme and predict and write the meaning of the targeted word. Then they check reference material to verify the correct meaning. So again, you've got a sentence with the word in a contextually rich position for the student to read. You've got a passage with the word in it, and then for the writing and breaking the words into morphemes, there's like graphic organizers. So let's look at an example here. A slug known as the stomach foot or gastropod crawled around the marine land. So gastropod is bold font. That's the target word here. In this sentence, it functions as an appositive, meaning it's set inside the comma and second comma, sort of implying that the definition of that word has been given. And we see in quotes, stomach foot, referring to a slug. So there's a lot of academically rich, cohesive markers in this sentence that students would have to know to be able to access those context clues. And it might be that we support this by directly modeling or thinking aloud. Maybe the picture clue helps. Maybe pre-teaching on how an appositive functions could be helpful to just that first step of reading, and then the next step of determining the word in context, guessing at what it means. Look for context clues. After they reread the sentence, they would write the target vocab word. So here's a spot at the top of a graphic organizer to write out the whole word gastropod. The next step, break it down into its smallest morphemes, gastro and pod. Gastro is for stomach, pod for foot, stomach, foot. This next step is a definition from either a glossary, online dictionary, source that has been provided, or is inferred from the text and doesn't need to be referenced in a source. A being, such as a slug, known as a stomach foot, that crawls on land. There's further explanation of that word, and this information gives deeper understanding so that perhaps this word gastropod can be used in a class discussion or can be used in a project where they're doing some sort of classification beyond just that single instance of the word showing up in that passage. So the further definition is any various mollusks of the class Gastropoda, such as the snail, slug, have a single coiled shell or no shell at all, a ventral muscular foot for locomotion, known as stomach foot mollusks. So this 8-step strategy, again, was empirically validated at the high school level and clearly aligns to standards under Common Core English Language Arts, language for vocabulary acquisition and use from grades 7 up. But it could have use and application for students in younger grades. Some of the steps might be simplified. The next strategy that I'll show has been validated with younger students in 4th and 5th grade. The strategy initially was published by Lenz and Hughes in 1990, and they used the acronym DISSECT as a mnemonic to capture the encompassed steps that, I don't like to use struggling readers, but that readers who are learning to be advanced decoders can benefit from explicit instruction in. And so the mnemonic DISSECT, in this case, stands for discover the context, isolate the prefix, separate the suffix, say the stem, examine the stem, check with someone, and try technology. I think the last one had, in its initial publication, said something like, then check the dictionary, but I modified it here on slide to try technology like an electronic dictionary. This slide and this mnemonic and its steps are very similar to there's a reference or resource on our Canvas page from a write-up of a project that I worked on with my colleagues in deaf education and bilingual education. And so the mnemonic that we came up with was richest, and we did a visual mnemonic instead of just words. But the steps are pretty much equitable to dissect. So it doesn't necessarily matter what mnemonic you use. It's the steps of looking at a word, reading it in context, breaking apart the word to its smallest meanings, and then trying to figure out more by putting the word back into context and checking with references to make sure that meaning matches the intended meaning. So discover the context requires that you skip over any unknown words, read to the end of the sentence, use any context clues to guess. If the guess doesn't match, just move on to the next step. The next step is isolate the prefix. Look for the first few letters of the word to see if there's a prefix phoneme that you're able to pronounce, prefix or phoneme. A list of prefixes should be provided. Maybe there would even be like a file folder that the student has access to, or a page with them bookmarked, or a display if you're in a physical classroom with a list on a anchor chart. And then the student draws the box around it. So there are some, like, instead of the graphic organizer here, there are some steps that like annotate on the page as you move through the steps. The next step, separate the suffix. So again, having a list of suffixes and then putting the box around it. Say the stem or the root is pronounce the stem of the word, the base of the word, the root of the word. If it cannot be named, move on to the next step. And if this, oops, I just skipped right through it. Divide the stem into small, pronounceable word parts using specific rules like syllabication rules. So rule 1, if the stem or part of the stem begins with a vowel, separate the first 2 letters and pronounce. If it begins with a consonant, separate the first 3 letters and pronounce. Continue to apply the rule until the end of the stem is reached. If the stem is still not identifiable, after using Rule 1, take off the first letter of the stem and use Rule 1 for the remainder of the stem. So there's kind of a structured process here to guide through. Rule 3, when two vowels are together, use what you know about pronunciation and try the different possibilities. If at the end of the 5th step the word still cannot be identified, the student should check with someone or try the dictionary. Checking with someone might be a teacher, might be a parent, might be a peer or classmate who can help see if they can identify the word. If that fails, then try looking up the pronunciation information and definition of the word through technology or dictionary. The next process is an explicit instruction routine. I'm going to stop this presentation here and then make a part 3.